The day after my mother was diagnosed with cancer, my husband Daniel suddenly proposed that we go on a budget. I tried hard to control my anger. I asked him what he meant, but he calmly explained to me, "From now on, for every expense in the household, we will each pay half. We will each be responsible for our own spending. I will no longer be in charge. For meals at home and going out together, we will also go halves. You will be responsible for your mother's hospital expenses." I was completely dumbfounded. I was already emotionally devastated by my mother's illness. Now I looked at the man in front of me. I couldn't believe my eyes. Daniel ignored my feelings. He went straight to the point. "You always like to buy useless things. Now something big has happened. Hasn't it? Your mother's illness is quite serious. I guess it's going to cost a lot of money." He continued. "I can't let this family be crushed. From now on, let's go halves. Otherwise, how can we raise a child in the future? I'll tell you what. Forget about treating your mother. That money would be better spent on something else. You'll end up with nothing. You'll regret it. What I'm saying may not be pleasant to hear, but it's the truth. You'd better find out how much money your mother has saved. And the house, transfer it to your name as soon as possible. That way you'll save yourself a lot of trouble in the future." Daniel's words made me feel increasingly uncomfortable. I even felt a little sick. "I feel so disappointed." He said, "I'm not going to abandon my mother. You can do it on an equal basis. My family will pay for the house. You and your mother will have to pay the rent every month." "Daniel, I really didn't expect this. Although I didn't expect you to take care of my mother, but I didn't expect this. You would say such a thing." My husband froze for a moment. He hurriedly explained, "I didn't say I wouldn't take care of my mother-in-law. She has cancer. The cure rate is very low. My mother raised me, and it wasn't easy. I can't let her live a good life and leave her with a mountain of debt." I looked at him coldly. I felt cold all over. "Your mother worked hard to raise you. My mother also sacrificed a lot. She has always been good to you. Is this how you repay her? Did your mother give you this idea?" Daniel suddenly turned pale. He shouted at me, "This is between you and me. What does my mother have to do with it? Ever since we got married, my mother has been taking care of you at home. What more do you want? I've warned you before. We both earn a salary. Don't always spend money so extravagantly. I suggested that we go Dutch for your sake. Why can't you just listen? Your mother only has you as a daughter. All that money of hers will be yours in the future, won't it? Now that she's sick. Don't bother others." Hearing this, I understood at once. His mother is his mother. My mother is just a cash machine in their eyes. Daniel is now especially worried that my mother's treatment will use up all the money. In that case, he will not get the property. I clenched my hands. Trying hard to control my emotions, I said to him, "Fine. Since it's going to be an equal split, you take care of your mother. I'll take care of mine." Daniel suddenly became anxious and said, "We have to be clear about every single expense. No one should take advantage of anyone. Sophia, since you married into our family, you have to take care of my mother. How can you say that? Besides, my mother served you. It's only right that you pay a little. If relatives find out, they'll gossip about me behind my back. I think that's ridiculous." Today, I realized that Daniel is really a person with double standards. The anger that had been suppressed suddenly came back. If we have to go halves, then we have to be clear about it. Otherwise, send your mother back to her hometown. I don't need her to take care of me. Daniel's face suddenly turned dark. "Why are you so cold and selfish? She is my mother. This is also her home. A married daughter is like water spilled. You should care more about my mother and me." I stared at the man in front of me. I understood instantly. He didn't want to take care of my mother. He was only interested in her money. He proposed to go halves with me, but I would still have to pay for his mother. When my mother passed away, he would inherit my family's wealth. This was obviously an attempt to take advantage of the situation. He was really calculating. After learning that my mother was ill, Daniel immediately distanced himself from the situation. He even tried to convince me not to treat my mother. Maybe he noticed my expression wasn't good. Daniel came over and took my hand, saying, "Honey, our families are both average. We have to rely on our own efforts. Do you know what it means to have a sick family member? It's a huge hassle. I know it's your mother. I'm not stopping you from treating your mother. Let's live together on an A basis from now on. Let's get this straight first. This will save a lot of trouble in the future. I understand that you can't accept it for the time being, but you have to remember, my mother and I will always be there for you. After your mother is gone, we can go back to our old lives. What do you think?" I can't believe my husband, who I've lived with for 5 years, could say such a thing. His behavior is incomprehensible. Does he think he's so clever? I didn't want to argue with Daniel anymore. I just slapped him. I agree to the arrangement, but I won't interfere with your support for your parents or your social life. If you don't agree, we can get a divorce immediately. I don't want to hold you back. Hearing the word divorce, Daniel's mouth twitched slightly. Maybe it was because he cherished the relationship between us. Or maybe it was because he suddenly realized something. Daniel finally agreed to my request to drive me to the hospital, but his face was terrible. We didn't say a word on the way. When we arrived at the hospital, I saw my mother in the hospital bed, seriously ill. I couldn't help crying. Mom, don't worry. Even if I have to sell the house and go bankrupt, I will definitely cure your illness. My mother was lying on the hospital bed. She was so thin that it made my heart ache. The side effects of the medicine made her suffer terribly. She tightly grasped my hand. As if she was telling me something important, she told me to be happy in the future. To be happy. I tried my best to hide my emotions. I explained that Daniel had been too busy at work recently. He didn't have time to visit her. She said to me with great earnestness, Sophia, don't ever compromise yourself for anyone. Mom has lived most of her life and finally sees clearly. Only you are the most important. Everything else is useless. I nod, to show that I understand. The nurse reminds me to pay the medical bill. I try to control my emotions and smile at my mother. I'll be right back. When I arrive at the payment counter, I hand the staff my bank card. Madam, your card is out of money. Please change it. I'm stunned. I immediately checked the transaction history. I found out that Daniel had transferred half of my savings. My mother is going to have an operation soon. I can't let her operation be delayed because of money problems. Besides, that money was originally transferred to me by my mother. I tried to call Daniel on video call, but it said he was busy. I called him again, but I heard a mechanical female voice. It said the other party was on the phone. I immediately called home, but my mother-in-law didn't answer either. I panicked. Tears welled up in my eyes. I was at the hospital's payment center. I was standing there alone. I felt so helpless and sad. Everything was dark. I kept calling Daniel, but there was still no answer. I felt so sad. My blood rushed to my head. Daniel actually wanted to harm my mother in this way. He deliberately transferred my money and deliberately didn't answer the phone. He thought he could control my mother and me. He even wants to bleed us dry. When I think about it, my heart sinks. If he can do this to my mother, he will definitely do the same to me. I quickly call my cousin. At the same time, I report the incident to the police. I say that someone has stolen money from my account. Luckily, my cousin arrives in time. My mother's operation goes smoothly. When the police arrive at the hospital, Daniel hears the news from somewhere and rushed over as well. He looks displeased. To his wife, Honey, the police told me. Your bank card was used fraudulently. Didn't you check the transaction history? I transferred the money. This is such a trivial matter. You didn't need to call the police. I was already busy. Now I've taken time off work because of your fuss. I've lost wages as a result. You have to pay me back. My cousin said with a face full of displeasure. Your mother-in-law is having an operation, and transferred the money for the operation, and you made my sister pay for your leave. Daniel, you've really gone too far. Don't you know that Sophia needs the money? That's her money. How can you just transfer it? What you've done is so inconsiderate. The money is gone. We definitely have to call the police. Daniel's face suddenly turned red. He said, Honey, didn't you already agree to live on an equal basis in the future? Of course the money should be split equally. How was I supposed to know that your card had your mother's operation fees on it? Now it's like I'm greedy for money. Why didn't you tell me if something was wrong? Now everyone knows. How embarrassing for me. Are you satisfied? Okay. I apologize. I'll return the money to you. Don't worry about it anymore. I'll cook whatever you want for dinner. I frowned. I looked at Daniel. I feel a surge of disgust. Go away. Daniel, I want a divorce. Daniel looks a little pale. He stands still. He usually cares a lot about appearances, seeing so many people around, even if he is angry. He can't let it show. Fortunately, my mother's operation went well. I asked my cousin to accompany me back to my mother's house to get some of her things. On the way home, I finally couldn't hold back. I burst into tears. I never imagined. The man who had promised me so much, now he's become like this. The day my mother was diagnosed, I told Daniel I hoped he would support me, but I didn't expect he to say that it was my mother who had a problem that I had to deal with myself. I always felt that I was a good wife and a dutiful daughter-in-law. He said that it was not easy for my mother-in-law to raise him alone, so I let him take her to live with us. We are usually busy at work, so my mother-in-law helps us with the housework, but I never mistreated her. I gave her a monthly allowance, and I gave her red envelopes during the Chinese New Year and other holidays. I bought her gifts. My mother was a little jealous sometimes. She said I treated my mother-in-law better than her. I always believed that sincerity could win back sincerity, but I never thought Daniel would take it for granted. A man like this is not someone I can rely on. I have to consider getting a divorce as soon as possible. Everything I did for them in the past was for nothing. From now on, don't even think about getting anything from me. I thought Daniel had already gone too far, but I didn't realize that my mother-in-law was even more heartless than he was. The mother and son had no intention of letting me off the hook. These days I've been staying at the hospital. I haven't been home. Daniel hasn't shown up either. Then suddenly something came up at the office. I had to rush back to deal with it. My cousin told me not to worry and go. She said she'd be right there. I had just arrived at the office when I got the call from my cousin. She said, "Sophia, you need to come back. Auntie is missing. We need to check the surveillance footage in the control room." I hurried back to the hospital. I saw my cousin and Auntie crying. My cousin said, "Sophia, this is all my fault. If only I had come sooner." The person in the next bed said a woman had come to visit Auntie. After they had a chat, my aunt's face suddenly changed. She unplugged her Roman 4 and left. I checked the surveillance camera in the ward. I found that the person who came to visit was my mother-in-law, Elizabeth. I immediately called my husband. "Daniel, what did your mother say to my mother at the hospital? Now my mother is missing. My mother went to visit out of goodwill. Why are you so ungrateful? You haven't been back for so many days. My mother has been eating steamed buns for several days. Hasn't your mother's operation already been completed? Hurry home." Daniel's tone was clearly dissatisfied with me. I suddenly felt dizzy. He said, "Don't you understand what I'm saying? I'll tell you. My mother is missing. If I find out what your mother has done, I will never let her off lightly." Elizabeth suddenly grabbed the phone and said, "Sophia, don't get me wrong. I just saw that you were very tired. I just spoke to your mother casually. Who would have thought she would be so depressed? It's all my fault. I apologize to you. Don't be mad at Daniel. He works hard. It's not easy to earn a living to support the family. My mother-in-law is still the same. She always pretends to be pitiful in front of her husband. It makes me seem unreasonable. Mom, you don't need to apologize to Sophia. It's obvious that she doesn't appreciate it, Sophia. Don't be unreasonable. Hurry home and apologize to my mother. Otherwise, we will never forgive you." Before I could say anything, he hung up quickly. Within 5 minutes, my mother-in-law sent a message. "Sophia, Mom doesn't blame you. You are Daniel's wife. Staying at your mother's all the time is not good for your mother. Hurry back. Take good care of Daniel. He will forgive you." At that moment, my headache got really bad. I took deep breaths. I remind myself not to argue with this mother and son. The most important thing now is to find my mother. Nothing else matters. Finally, we find my mother beside my father's grave, paying her respects. A huge weight has been lifted from my heart. My mother tells me that my mother-in-law has come to see her and persuaded her not to cause any more trouble for her children. She hopes that my mother will feel at ease leaving her daughter in her care. What a nice thing to say. But in reality, she is doing something harmful. Now I have to make this mother and son bear the consequences of their actions. I take a few deep breaths. I try to calm myself down. I call my security company Uncle's phone. I ask him to find me some people. Daniel always brags about being filial, doesn't he? He always says he wants to live with me on an equal basis, doesn't he? I'll grant his wish. Trying to control me and take advantage of my family, forget it. My cousin says she'll help me hold the fort. We returned home in a large group, but they weren't there. I had someone pack up their things. Then I contacted a logistics company and sent their things back to their hometown. After that, I changed the locks. I moved back in with my mother. The first to notice something was wrong was Elizabeth. She called me, but I didn't want to answer. The winters in the north are particularly cold. I saw on the surveillance camera that she kept waiting outside, rubbing her hands together. I endured this hardship. I guess I should pay back the interest. Not long after, I got a call from Daniel. Every time he called, I just hung up. He had no choice. He had to get someone to unlock the door. At that point, the security guards I had arranged to come in advance came into play. They stood guard at the door. The person who came to unlock the door saw the situation. He didn't want to get into trouble, so he quickly left. They had to call the police. When my cousin and I went home, Daniel looked really bad. As soon as he saw me, he started scolding me. "Sophia, what do you mean? Why did you change the locks on the house? And why didn't you answer the phone? Look at her. Mom is freezing. Apologize immediately. I took 2 steps back. I pinched myself secretly. Tears immediately welled up in my eyes. My mother needs to have major surgery. We urgently need money. I decided to sell the house. Daniel heard what I said, immediately grabbed my arm, loudly asked, "What, you sold the house without asking me?" My cousin next door immediately pushed him away and said, "Your aunt bought the house you live in. Her name is on the title deed. Sophia has every right to sell the house. Besides, didn't you say you wanted to live with my sister on an equal footing, but you transferred all her money? She had no choice." I stood there wiping away my tears. "I know you've always wanted my mother to die, but I really can't do it, Daniel. I beg you, let me fulfill my filial duty. Once I have the money, I will definitely redeem the house." The neighbors next door heard it and immediately understood what was going on. There are such strange people. It's really a case of husband and wife being birds of a feather. When disaster strikes, they fly away separately. Isn't this just trying to take advantage of the woman's family? This is really outrageous. With tears in my eyes, my voice was a little choked. "You and your mother-in-law just bear with it for a while. I've already sent the things back to my hometown." Then, I whispered, "The doctor said, my mother doesn't have much time left, I beg you." The nosy neighbor auntie quickly pulled me back and said, "Girl, this kind of scum doesn't deserve you to kneel. We are here. Let's see how they can still be so shameless." When the mother-in-law saw this situation, she sat down on the ground and burst into tears. She cried and cried. "What bad luck has befallen our family? My daughter-in-law has even gone so far as to make up this excuse to divorce my son for another man. Sophia, you're trying to get rid of us. You're even using your mother as an excuse." She glanced at Daniel. He understood immediately. It turned out, the best way to destroy a woman was to spread false rumors about her. I turned to the police and said, "Comrade policeman, if someone spreads rumors, can't you take them away?" Elizabeth froze. She didn't think I would actually take her to the police. She sat on the floor, began to act up, making a racket. I looked at Daniel, pointed at the phone in his cousin's hand, and said to him, "It's being broadcast live. Tell your mother to get up quickly. This has gotten out of hand. Be careful your job won't be affected." Daniel's face immediately changed and hurriedly pulled Elizabeth up from the floor. Elizabeth shook his hand off and said, "Why are you pulling me? I'm not afraid of them. I've lived for so many years. I've never been afraid of anyone. Your mother-in-law is not in good shape. I have to help you manage your money." That old woman. I've already said what I had to say. If I were her, I would have been unable to hold on any longer. "Mom, please stop talking, stop talking. You said Sophia would never get away from you. Now look what's happened." Elizabeth became more and more agitated as she spoke. Daniel tried to cover her mouth, but she kept talking in desperation. Daniel slapped his mother. Everyone present was stunned. My cousin became more and more angry as she listened. She wanted to go and hit Daniel. I quickly stopped her. "Don't let yourself be taken advantage of by people like this. You hit him. He might sue you for 20,000 yuan. It's not worth it." My feelings for Daniel were completely gone after all that had happened. I was sure I didn't love him anymore. My heart wouldn't stir for him again. After everything was settled, my cousin and I went back to my mother's house together. Looking back, I was so blindly in love. I almost took Daniel's advice and sold the house to buy a new one. My mother played the stern parent. At the time, our relationship was very tense. Now I understand how wise her decision was. Parents love their children and always think of their long-term interests. Thinking about this, I feel so ashamed. I'm determined. No matter what, I have to cure my mother's illness. Facing a family like this, I can't continue. Divorce is the only option. At the time, I was enchanted by his sweet words and lost myself over the years. "I have always done everything they wanted," he said. "My mother is not easy," and he put the responsibility of taking care of his mother on me. His mother is not easy. That's because of him. What does that have to do with me? A fox always shows its tail. I can see their true colors, thanks to my father watching over me from heaven. I should have understood long ago. Love is mutual. One side cannot just give. I locked myself in my room. My phone kept ringing. It was Daniel calling. As soon as he answered, he started shouting at me. "You don't have a son. You divorced me. When your mother died, there wasn't even a funeral. I know you're upset. Apologize to me and my mother right now. We can still forgive you," I said coldly. "You're dead. My mother won't die. Stop worrying about other people." After I hung up, Daniel still wouldn't let it go. He sent me a voice message questioning why I had kicked him and his mother out of the house. He also said that, without a man in the house, we would definitely be bullied. I found this really laughable. Mom, I can take care of myself. No outsiders have bullied me. Instead, it is the closest man to me who is bullying me. I have enough money to live a good life. My cousin helped me hire a lawyer and draw up a divorce agreement. Daniel obviously wasn't willing to divorce through an agreement. In that case, I will have to protect my rights through legal means. After all these days of investigation, I discovered that he had transferred a large amount of marital property without my knowledge. Divorce proceedings do take a lot of time, but I have the support of my family. I'm not worried about anything now. The operation went well. Mom is recovering well. I'm living with her. Mom is getting better every day. I filmed her recovery and posted it on WeChat Moments. Daniel actually left a comment. He said, "Even if she recovers, she'll still die in the end. Destroying her daughter's marriage is a waste of good fortune." I was afraid my mother would be upset if she saw it, so I deleted the comment. Then I cursed him on WeChat. "My mother is getting better every day. Unlike you. Watch out, you're going too far. Something's wrong with your body." Elizabeth called me. She sounded really angry. She said, "Sophia, if my son didn't feel sorry for you, he would have divorced you long ago. After all these years of marriage, you still haven't been able to have a child. Hurry up and invite us home respectfully. I will tell Daniel not to pursue your past. Your mother can't be with you forever. Daniel is the one you will depend on for the rest of your life." I couldn't help but laugh out loud. If you don't want a divorce, that's fine. Then let Daniel come over and apologize to me, and promise to pay for my mother's care. Sophia, that won't do. A married daughter is like water that has been poured out. Your family's problems shouldn't trouble my son. A grown man has to apologize to his wife and look after his mother-in-law. People would laugh at us back home, then go back to your village and live on your own. We won't be a burden to each other. That won't do. I raised my son so that he would have someone to rely on when I'm old. If people find out, they'll laugh at me. Shut up. I must get a divorce. After Daniel and his mother were kicked out, they had to rent a place to live. Elizabeth had no income. Daniel's salary barely covered the rent, not to mention the alimony for his mother. Elizabeth had made some inappropriate comments on live TV before. They were posted online. Daniel's company soon found out. The big project they had planned for him was also snatched away by a competitor. Their company mainly deals with the elderly industry. They were worried that Daniel's comments would damage the company's image, so they transferred him to the administrative department. As a result, he no longer had any extra income. Elizabeth, who no longer received any financial support, could no longer live the carefree life with her old girlfriends. Therefore, she was very dissatisfied with her son. Daniel really had no way out. He wanted to come to me, but his cousin and uncle kept him out. He could only drown his sorrows in alcohol. When he returned home at night, he had a fight with Elizabeth. In the scuffle, Elizabeth accidentally fell. As a result, she broke her leg. He can't find me, someone who can take care of his mother for free and help him save money. He can't take leave to take care of his mother personally. He can only reluctantly spend money on a nanny. It costs 5,000 yuan a month. His salary is less than 10,000 yuan. In addition to paying rent, utilities, and daily expenses, when I was there, he could relax a bit. Now life has suddenly returned to the pre-liberation period. Every day, he can only eat steamed buns and pickled vegetables. So, Daniel has set his sights on me again. I get a call from my mother. I hurry home. I open the door. I see Daniel and Elizabeth sitting on my sofa. Elizabeth says to me, "Mother-in-law, I have trouble moving around. Can you get me a glass of water? The doctor told me to take more calcium. Can you stew some ribs for me tonight? Mom, you're really putting me to the test. My mother is indeed not very convenient right now." The two of them are not at all uncomfortable with each other. They even ask my mother to help out. As soon as I walked in the door, Daniel looked at me happily. He came over, took my hand and said, "Honey, I've come to my senses. We're a couple, we have a deep bond. After a fight, we should make up. You should take care of our mother. I was not magnanimous enough before. Please forgive me. We won't practice AA anymore. I'll let you handle all the money. You'll be the head of the family." That's right. They'd switched tactics. They wanted my mother to become their nanny. That was a brilliant plan. I didn't say anything, but I immediately contacted my uncle. I asked him to come over with someone. Daniel saw that I didn't say anything. He thought I'd softened. He pitied me and complained, "Honey, you don't know. While you were gone, I had a really hard time. Mom broke her leg. I can't take care of her alone. I really don't know what to do. I had to hire a babysitter. Every day I can only eat steamed buns and pickled vegetables. I can't get enough nutrition. He said, let's live a good life together. We'll take care of both moms together. I listened. I couldn't help but laugh. I felt both angry and amused. Daniel, you're dreaming. You haven't woken up yet. Daniel didn't expect me to respond like that. His face fell, but thinking about the good life ahead, he held back. He said, Sophia, I'll give you a way out. Just hurry up and come down. You're a woman. You can't give birth to a son. And there's a mother who needs looking after, apart from me. Who else would want you? I said to my mother, Mom, you should also persuade Sophia. Don't be so stubborn. For so long, I never dared to tell my mother the truth, but she probably already guessed what was going on. I thought my mother would advise me to bear with it, but she rushed straight into the kitchen, grabbed the kitchen knife, and stood in front of me. She said, Don't think I don't know what you two are up to. Since my daughter has decided to get a divorce, I support her. You leave my house immediately, or I'll call the police. Just then, my uncle arrived with some men. Daniel saw that there were a lot of people around. He didn't dare to do anything too extreme. I walked over, took out $10 from my pocket, threw it at Daniel's lion. Here's $10. Take your mom and go. Don't miss the last bus. After saying that, he gestured for the security guards to throw them out. Daniel was furious. He wanted to rush over to me, but a couple of strong men stood in his way. He couldn't get past them. He shouted in a state of emotional turmoil, You won't get away with this. You want a divorce from me. Forget it. I walked up to him. I looked him straight in the eye and said, Daniel, I suggest you agree to the divorce without further ado. Otherwise, the child outside might not be able to claim his paternal grandfather. Daniel froze. How did you know? I just smiled, without saying a word. If you dare to do anything to them, I won't let you get away with it. It's all over now. I told my mother what had happened recently. I thought she would scold me, but she hugged me gently. She comforted me tenderly. Sophia, you've been wronged, don't worry. With Mother here, I will definitely not let you be wronged again. I knew Daniel couldn't be trusted from the beginning. My mother and I had many conflicts because of him. Looking back now, I should have persuaded you properly. This is also partly my fault. My tears welled up in my eyes. I felt so sorry for my mother. My father died young. My mother had to shoulder the family business alone. At the time, I insisted on marrying Daniel. Although my mother objected, she still bought me a house. She said, as long as we could live peacefully for 5 years, I could manage the family business. I had great faith in Daniel, but I never imagined things would turn out like this. Scumbags are usually very good at hiding their true nature. Sophia, you were just too naive. Never mind, just consider it a lesson learned. I made up with my mother. All the unhappiness disappeared. The lawyer told me some good news. Daniel agreed to the divorce. The moment I got the divorce decree, I felt like I was being reborn. The sunshine felt so warm on my skin. Life gradually calmed down. I took over my mother's company and accompanied her to therapy. The doctor told me, my mother's condition is under control as long as she has regular checkups. There is no danger to her life. When I have time, I take my mother everywhere to see the mountains and rivers. We have a very happy life. I am so comfortable. Of course, I can't let Daniel get too comfortable. His lover is his first love from the village because I am infertile. Elizabeth found her, hoping she could help give birth to a child. Afterwards, she planned to let me adopt the child and then arrange for his first love to come to my house as a nanny. But this plan was revealed before it even began. My company is Daniel's employer. A word from the employer can put him in a difficult position. Now he not only has to take care of his mother, but also his new wife and child. Life is so stressful that he can hardly breathe. After weighing the pros and cons, he sent Elizabeth back to her village. He asked his wife to take the children and go out to work. She came to China to live a good life with him. She didn't come to suffer. Within 2 months, she left the children behind. She took the money and her old lover and left. What you lose is always the most precious. I became the ideal person in Daniel's heart for some reason. From time to time, he would call me, begging for my forgiveness, wanting to get back together with me. Elizabeth was used to me taking care of her. She never liked the new wife. Even after the new daughter-in-law gave birth to a son, she was still not satisfied. They fought a lot. Later, Daniel sent her back to her village. After a few days, the new daughter-in-law ran away. No one was there to take care of the child, so she had to take her back. She was getting old. Taking care of the child was very hard. She was so tired that she could not straighten her back. Daniel was banned from the entire industry. There was an elderly mother at home and a child who needed care. Everything that could be sold had been sold. There was really no other way. I had to deliver takeaways on my way home from work. I got a call from Daniel. He said, "Sophia, can you lend me some money? My child is very sick. I need money urgently. I understand that you have a problem with me, but the child is innocent." I thought about it for a while, and finally decided to join in the fun. When I arrived at the hospital, Elizabeth and Daniel were discussing whether I would actually come. Elizabeth asked Daniel, "Does this trick work? Sophia will really come." Daniel sat on the hospital bed with his legs crossed. He saw the baby without saying a word. Suddenly, he reached out and pinched him. The baby immediately started crying. The sound of crying echoed in the ward. "Mom, don't worry. At the beginning, I just used a little trick to get her hooked. Even if the baby is not hers, she will still feel soft-hearted. As long as we can get her again, and we can put the past behind us, you mustn't get into trouble." My eyelid keeps twitching. I feel like something's going to happen, but that's your own son, don't hit him. It hurts me to watch. If you want to live in peace, shut up, otherwise, get out. Elizabeth was so shocked by her son's actions that she immediately shut up. Daniel didn't think the baby's crying was loud enough. He gave it another hard pinch. I had thought that the pressure of marriage had changed his character, but I never imagined that from the moment we met. He had been plotting against me. I had been cheated by them for so many years. A strong feeling of hatred suddenly welled up in my heart. Thinking about this, I pushed the door open. Elizabeth was taken aback. "Daniel, even if this child is not yours, you can't abuse him. If you call the police, you'll be in trouble." Daniel listened to me, asked with a puzzled look, "What are you talking about? Isn't this my son?" I said to Elizabeth with a smile, "Auntie, this is such a big matter. How can you still hide it from your son?" "Daniel, you don't know yet. Actually, you are infertile. This child belongs to your uncle's cousin." "What?" Daniel's mind went blank. He stared at Elizabeth. Elizabeth looked as if she had been caught in the act. She hurriedly lowered her head. Daniel anxiously asked, "Mom, tell me the truth. What she said isn't true, right?" I took the test results out of my pocket. Daniel's legs suddenly went weak. He sat down. Seeing him like this, I continued, "Where do you think all the money you've been saving for your mother has gone all these years? She's actually been using it to support her family. And now, she even has to help her family look after their grandchildren. Where do you think your new wife has gone? She has gone home to live with your cousin." Daniel grabs Elizabeth hard. He shakes her violently. Elizabeth pushes him away forcefully. She says sternly, "You are my son. Your money is mine. You can't have children. Of course I have to find a way to continue the family line. Those are your cousin's children. They are also family. It's better than giving the money to outsiders. At least you can rest assured." I clear my throat. I say to my aunt, "Daniel is in such a difficult situation. Just get the money back that you gave away. He is your own son after all." Yes. Mom, you go to your uncle. Get all the money back. That's not very likely. Your uncle has to take care of the whole family. How hard is he working? What about me? I'm your own son." As he spoke, his face suddenly turned pale. His body began to convulse. He picked up the thermos by his side. He smashed it hard against Elizabeth's head. Blood immediately flowed from Elizabeth's head. She fell straight to the ground. After treatment, Elizabeth unfortunately suffered a stroke. It caused her to become paralyzed on one side of her body. Daniel was sent to prison for intentional assault. No one in Elizabeth's family wanted to take her in. No one cared for the child who had been born sick. But none of this has anything to do with me anymore. I didn't want to have anything to do with this family anymore. I changed all my contact details. The company grew rapidly. Mum's illness wasn't completely cured, but she was able to live a good quality of life. That was my greatest happiness. My cousin and I had made plans to go shopping. She suddenly told me in a mysterious whisper, "Have you heard? Daniel has been sentenced to death." I was a little surprised. I thought he was about to be released from prison. I later found out that Elizabeth's family used his hard-earned money to expand their small business. When he was released from prison, Elizabeth's family felt particularly disgusted with him. Daniel was kicked out of the house, like kicking out a dog. Elizabeth did not receive timely treatment. Coupled with begging for a living, she eventually froze to death under a bridge in the cold winter. Daniel felt completely hopeless in life. He set fire to Elizabeth's house, which killed all 14 members of the family in the fire. I went to visit Daniel. His mental state was already not very normal. He kept mumbling, "I'd rather be sorry to everyone than be sorry by everyone." I looked at him calmly and said, "In fact, that child is yours after all. Infertility is not absolute. You have caused me. You have caused me, I laughed, without saying a word, and walked away. Daniel thought I didn't know. After my mother was diagnosed with an illness, he bought me a large accident insurance policy. I was just protecting myself when I got home. My mother had prepared a delicious meal. I leaned into her embrace, feeling that life was really good right now. I hoped it would always be this happy.